Well, I feel like most startup founders are infatuated with the product, and eight times
Yeah,
out of 10, that's not usually the problem. It's usually they don't know how
hmm
to sell it, or they don't know how to message to sell it. They don't understand how to like find traction channels, sales channels that work, and actually go sell the thing.
absolutely. So our event structure also helps that. Basically, you're pitching to an audience of people that would make up a tech startup, and then we do market making. People that raise their hand, they go into a group, and then it could be just getting insight from them. It can be um, giving or getting advice, not just building.
And we're back for another episode of the Startup Hustle. This is your host, Matt Watson. Excited for another Matt and Matt episode. Our guest today is Matt Martin. He's one of the co-founders of Startup Oasis. We're going to be talking about his journey today to build startup communities. Startup communities are really important. Founders are always stuck. They always need help. They're always trying to build a team, trying to find talent. Those are all different things that are important and part of a startup community. Before we get started, I do want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by Fullscale, which is my company. We have 300 employees in the Philippines, helping all sorts of startups and scale-ups build whatever they need help building: front end, back end, mobile, QA, all forms of software development. You can check us out at fullscale.io. Matt, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me, Matt. Excited.
I always love the Matt and Matt show. We must have more guests with the name Matt than anything else. It happens quite a bit, I feel. So
Yeah, the corny joke of how does it feel to have the greatest first name ever kind of thing.
well, so tell me more about Startup Oasis. Give me the elevator pitch. What is Startup Oasis?
Startup Oasis is the next gen startup community, bringing all the pieces that would be in a startup together with a brand new kind of event structure. It's really the next iteration.
So when we say startup, what is your definition of startup? Is it somebody who's just creating a brand new business? Is it a tech company that's been around for 5 years and they're just trying to figure out how to grow? Is it Uber? Are they still a tech startup? Like, how do you define startup?
That's a great question. I think it probably has something to do with like a revenue amount. I think if you're making 50 million a year, I don't think you can call yourself a startup anymore.
Unless you're one of those ones that actually gets to somehow that much money in like 1 year, like OpenAI or somebody, right?
Right. Wow. Yeah.
So creating startups is really hard. You and your co-founder, what's your co-founder's name?
Rob.
Rob. So
Rob.
you, Rob, and Rob have started this. What kind of experience do you guys have in creating your own startups that led you to want to do this?
Great question. So I came to Atlanta from Philadelphia to start a startup, anything. But I found that basically, just like the name Startup Oasis suggests, whether it's Philly or Atlanta, we were in what I would call a corporate captured resource desert. And any group or person, investor, they're all waiting on the other side of that desert. And you have to track with all your savings and everything to possibly the worst negotiating position in the history of mankind. You're like trying to get a little bit of water and they decide your fate. So to make a long story short, I created this because I was basically the market for it. And I saw that if you have an idea and no one's around to help you, does it really exist? So there are different resources and ways we do this between the marketing and event structure that maximize this journey for them.
So I would say most cities in the United States have a lot of resources for startups. But if you move to Kansas City next week and you're like, hey, I want to start a startup, what kind of help is there around town? You would have no idea, right? You would be clueless. And so I think the first thing is like, how do you solve the problem of knowing? So in Kansas City, we have Kansas Angel tax credits, we have MTC, we have Keystone, we have the Kauffman Foundation, we have 1 million cups, we have like all these different things that go on. I don't know if there's a good resource anywhere that tells you that all these things exist. I mean, is that part of the problem you're trying to solve? Is like, I'm in this city, what are all the resources?
Great question. So really it centers around the divide between people who have successfully been able to get into the startup world and the people who are stuck in 9 to 5 world. Because almost all the events and programming, at least in Atlanta and Philly, are during the day, or even if they're free, all the talent usually is spoken for. If you only had $5,000 to do some sort of go to market and you didn't have it built, well, that $5,000 is going to go straight to development, and then you have nothing left. So it's really about the divide between the startup world and the 9 to 5 world. And I come from 9 to 5 world, where it's hard to even be there present unless it's some evening event. And even if you do make it, those resources, a lot of them are behind massive paywalls or just corporate captured the gatekeepers, we call them. So that's why I usually say that it reminds me of a mirage in a desert. So the resources are kind of there, but education, sure, we have a lot of that. Angel and seed investments, they're waiting on the other side of the desert. But everything in between, that's what we're looking at.
Okay. So how do you guys solve that problem then? I got a business idea. I need a business partner. I need to figure out how to start making some revenue. I need to build the product. Mm-hmm. I'm in the middle of the desert. How do you guys help solve this?
So it's really a lot of different innovations organizationally put together. The first and simplest is accessibility, where during the evening or weekend, it's free, it's central location, right? But then, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Well, it's like specifically, how do you guys help solve this challenge? How does Startup Oasis specifically help solve this?
So, yes. So all the groups that we have in all these different platforms, they are specialized to be found by those people that would make up the startup, a tech startup, basically. And so we reach into these little grassroots groups and bring them together under the banner of Startup Oasis, where then they meet all in the same place at the same time. And so it's accessible. They can get to it from their rush hour traffic. And they're bringing people that already have an expectation of joining a project and being a part of something. And then thirdly, this is kind of my favorite, the whole Groucho Marx thing of, I would never want to be part of a group that would have me as a member. A lot of these groups, they advertise that we're for this like group or for this people like founders, but then you end up getting people that are selling to founders.
Oh yeah, a lot of vendors.
Right. So all you get, a lot of these big hubs are the insurance salesmen and the lawyers,
wealth management.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what wealth? I'm in a startup.
I have negative money at this point.
So what I did for some of this marketing is, let's just say founders group and developer group, right? I named the founder group Atlanta Tech Co-Founders. There are no tech co-founders in the tech co-founder group. There's only the people looking for them. Well, I mean, probably there are some, but, and then same thing for the developer group. It's called Projects for Developers, and that sets the expectation that they're joining a project. They're not charging. They want to be part of something. It's a side project. And so I've kind of recreated Silicon Valley circa 1980 in a way, where people were just building the future just for the hell of it.
So in Atlanta, how has the success of this been? So you have these founder meetups once a month. You have some developer meetups once a month. Like, how has the success of this been?
Well, we don't really do a whole lot of marketing just yet, just maybe now. and we went from 0 to 1,500 followers on LinkedIn like that. And everywhere we've gone, we've killed it in every city. We had to throttle back our push in San Francisco because we were about to overwhelm our venue. Like, we had 200 people, and that was just holding all the horses back. So we really have something here. Rob says it's like a religious experience. It's we're like a church almost, where you got to be here and experience it. But we're on the uptick. Like, we're not like fully established and mature yet, but you're catching us at a very interesting moment in our history where stuff's about to happen.
Well, my question is, so for the founders that are going to these events, though, can you tell me a success story about one of the founders that went to your event and then XYZ happened?
Oh yeah. So typically, this happens where they need a CTO or a founding team, and when they come back to us and they're like, "Hey, I just got funded for this MVP we just launched," we help bring them to that standpoint that they were considered investable. So we have a bunch of examples of that. I mean, I was just talking to one of our founders last week, and she said the same thing. You helped me find my CTO, and now we're looking at getting funded.
So for most of the startups you're dealing with, is their problem more building the product or sales and marketing?
I say it's both. You definitely get some that have already built the product, and now they're looking for help. Non-tech side, marketing help. It's really the whole gamut, and that's kind of why the startup community is. It's like the whole community. Like, we get the long tail of all of the situations.
Well, I feel like most startup founders are infatuated with the product, and 8 times out of 10, that's not usually the problem. It's usually they don't know how to sell it, or they don't know how to message to sell it. They don't understand how to like find traction channels, sales channels that work, and actually go sell the thing. They would rather be like Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, like building it. And I was that guy 20 years ago. Like, I get it. I was that guy.
Right.
But I feel like most startup problems are because they don't go try and sell something.
Absolutely. So our event structure also helps that. Basically, you're pitching to an audience of people that would make up a tech startup, and then we do market making. People that raise their hand, they go into a group, and then it could be just getting insight from them. It can be giving or getting advice, not just building. So it's almost like a focus group or a mastermind, but also a hackathon if need be. It can really be anything it needs to be, given whoever's there.
So how do you help these startup founders? So odds are you're saying most time when you talk to these people, they need a tech co-founder, right? Like that is like one of the biggest problems always.
I would say that, yeah, like 60% of them, it will be tech co-founder, 20-30% will be the non-tech marketing side. And then we get a couple that are just like, oh, I need an investor. Like, don't we all,
So how do you find these tech co-founders? Because they're like purple squirrels if they're good ones.
Oh my God. So apparently this is become my superpower. I don't know.
Well, you should charge a lot of money for that then.
That's an interesting way of putting it. So we're going to go by, I would call it the runaway value theory business model versus resource capture, which is basically our whole world operates that way, as you know. But we do want to create a situation, which we already have, where we're giving so much value away for free. It's like water flowing downhill. And then you just create business models out of that, where they're already getting value, and then they're just taking part inertia-wise. So we're going to be doing that, but it won't be the charge up front model. It'll be something else, media, real estate, you name it.
But the question is, how do you help these startup founders find a technical co-founder?
Yes.
And what do you look for, I guess, in a technical founder to say, like, okay, this isn't just somebody who graduated college last week and who's willing to write code for free, and that's why they're our new tech co-founder. Like, this person could actually go build some complex, cool product and scale this thing. Like, how do you how do you help them navigate that?
Right. So between our groups, and some of them are specifically catered to the developers, and it's really, you get a diverse set of experiences. So it's not like heavily new people or neophytes. You get a lot of people who are just looking for the next project, and they're like, well, I've been in AI for 10 years and doing all this 20 years. Like, it's everyone, the new and the experienced. People, I mean, it's not like if you build it, they will come, but people are already searching for that next thing in their lives. And from my experience, it hasn't skewed too much either way, right? There are some new people, but we definitely get a lot of really experienced people.
So you think these are developers that are just looking for a side project, and if something comes of it, something comes of it, but they're willing to invest some time in one of these things?
Exactly. It's giving their dreams a shot.
The challenge is most people that are good engineers does not mean they're good product people, and does not mean that they know how to like manage a team, run a business, grow a business, be a CTO, any of that. They just like know how to write code.
It's a great point. Typically what happens in the as-is startup community, people have got it in their heads that they need to be Superman or Superwoman because of that quote-unquote desert, that they now have to do everything and be everything. But that's not really the case, especially from what we've been able to create. You don't have to be the product guy or girl or the marketing, and you need to be in a team anyways. So that's what you're going to find when we created this community made up of the people that would be in a tech startup anyways.
Well, I do want to take a minute to remind everybody today's episode is brought to you by Fullscale. If you need to hire software developers, you got a team, but now you need a bigger team, need more developers, we can help you out. Check us out at fullscale.io. No matter what your tech stack is, mobile, QA, all the different stuff, we can help you. Check us out. So, Matt, I'm curious, for the startups that you deal with, do you see a lot bigger success for the ones that have co-founders versus the one that is a single founder?
Absolutely. And the ones that don't find co-founders, they die with a whimper. You just don't hear from them again. So absolutely.
I think one thing about having a co-founder is you help keep each other in check, and hopefully you bring different skill sets. I mean, when I run into these co-founders and they're like, we were both software engineers at Harvard, and I'm like, this is doomed. Neither one of you know how to sell a single damn thing. This is bad. Or know how to run operations. That doesn't mean you can't hire those people, but really it's best when you have different skill sets. You have people that are, visionary, they're going to go build something. You have people that are operations people that can cross the T's and dot the I's. That's not me. That's a different skill set. And you have people that are good at sales and marketing. Like, these are totally different skill sets. And it's better, I think, if you can get, a mixture of those things.
Oh, I'll go even further than that. So I also work in Fortune 500 world. And typically, when you end up getting that diverse set of people to make up your team, number one, they're inspired, but a lot of them are really talented at what they do. So it's like an all-star team. And I would take the startup team any day of the week over some, bored corporate people that are just working on a project.
So tell me, when you guys are growing these communities, what is your goal? Like, going forward here, you're trying to recreate what you've done in Atlanta in every city in the country? Like, what is your goal here?
I don't know if you saw the movie The Social Network, but we're at that point where it's like we don't even know what this could be yet. But we do want to be a community of communities. So that's everything, all the above. So we're going to start with media. We're going to look at sponsorships and grants, but then we'll look into all the things that exist now, like Angel.co or some platform, and to not recreate them, but to do better. So without getting shiny toy syndrome, we'll be focusing on one thing at a time, but we will eventually just be. It's kind of like Providence, right? You can't fight the air around you. It just is. We just want to be that infrastructure of what just is.
And so, like in Atlanta, there's not other communities like this today?
No, actually not. When we went virtual for COVID, I had people from all these different cities in different countries asking, where can I find this in my city? I can't find this in my city. And I was just blown away. I thought it was just Philly or Atlanta. I had people calling in from France, Singapore. Like it's a big issue.
Do you think that the startup communities or what startups need has changed much since COVID?
Since COVID, I think the deck has reshuffled a little bit where the old names are not as dominant anymore because a lot of them were so big. And when you're part of the infrastructure like that, you have to follow the cues, right? Now, yes, you have to shut down and be not doing that for a whole year. But I kept going. And the laws of group dynamics are if you have 0 people versus 4 people, well, someone's going to join the 4-person group because that's more fun. So that's what I mean by it really reshuffle the deck a little bit. I guess that's what I could say. And then just not even talking about COVID, I will give a lot of investors some credit. They have grown to be more realistic to the life situations of the founders, whereas 10, 15 years ago, stop me if you've heard this, we require our founders to be on this full time and to quit their jobs.
Right.
Right. And so basically you're telling me to live under a bridge and try to sell my app to people on the street. So I will give them that. It's evolved to be more current or more realistic to each other's situations.
What role do you think mentors, investors, and other corporations play into the community that you're building?
What we're focusing on is to try to bring more emphasis on the community itself. Like, yes, they're part of the community, but what we want to do is, I'll give you an example. Investors, right? Typically, you wait for someone to come in from the ivory tower, and then maybe they dabbled in real estate, and then some of them will be wishy-washy, or the whole long tail of situations. Instead, I want to get the community to invest in itself. I'll give you an example. So we have a digital footprint of 10,000 strong so far, people, members, followers, etc. And if I were to create what I would call a pass-through business model, meaning let's say you want to be seen and you want to see others that play a role that you need, right? If you're a developer, you want to see founders and whatnot. Let's just say, for example, that you're paying $100 a year for that. And let's say we get 1,000 people to do that. Well, you think you're paying for that, and you are, but we also just put the money into our own angel fund. So now you're also an angel investor. So you create this pass-through business model to give a secondary benefit to what you were already getting, to get the community to invest in itself rather than waiting for Superman. So how do you incentivize that on the individual level to create a mass benefit? And so that's one of the things we're playing with.
Okay. Well, so how do you, I think How do you, what are your thoughts around bootstrapping, and how do you guys support or push founders to also think about just bootstrapping and not even trying to raise money?
Bootstrapping is more realistic for most cities, I think. From who I've talked to in San Francisco, that's like a one-of-a-kind place where you can think about getting invested in before you build it, which is ridiculous to me. So bootstrapping really is the most realistic model as far as what can be done, and as far as reducing risk enough for the investor so that he or she can feel like this pie in the sky thing isn't just money down the drain. So, and how we help the whole bootstrapping journey is almost like we're a trading post, like on your trek. And now you got partners, you have education. We're associated with Georgia Tech here, so they do a lot of education. And then you can fail fast and cheap instead of all your savings being tied up in this one expensive lesson that you learn if it fails. So we have people that come back after they failed, and then they attract another group, and then they keep going, and then they go even further, and then they do it again, go even further. And so that's also been a pattern of being able to create a situation where all their chips are not on the table every hand. They can. So yeah, that's how we help the bootstrappers.
So as part of your events, do you have experts come in that are speaking and sharing best practices and stuff, or like what is the format of these events?
Great question. So we do some networking in the beginning, but it's mainly a pitch plus hackathon event where if you're a founder, you're pitching to an audience of people that could help you. And of course, the people in the audience might be interested in one of the startups. And so we do some market making, which, people raise their hand if they want to be part of it. Then they go into a breakout room. And then from there, it's open-ended where, if it makes sense, okay, join the team. Or maybe there's just insight or advice given. So that's kind of how it works. And then it's different from hackathons and whatnot because there's an expectation or there's an understanding that the story came before this event and then there's a story after this event. It's not trying to build a whole thing in 3 days and then you never hear from someone again. So it's an ongoing relationship, and the breakouts really help that team formation.
So when you're in these communities, do you feel like it is a struggle to get diversity and inclusion in these communities? Or is that naturally happening where you're getting a very diverse set of founders that come in?
Yeah, we're naturally getting that. It's like before all the political fights begin, right? We're just like a baby. Everyone loves babies, right? So we're kind of neutral, the most neutral you could possibly be. So literally anyone that comes in, they have a shot at, making unicorn status. So it's very, I would say, probably the most meritocratic situation that I've ever found.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you doing this today. It's been great having you on the show. I do want to remind everybody that today's episode is brought to you by Fullscale. You can check us out at fullscale.io. Matt's Startup Oasis is at startupoasis.org. Matt, do you have any final words of wisdom for everybody out there in regards to community?
Final words of wisdom. I'll give one quick metaphor. It's about paralysis by analysis, right? If you have a car and you make a left turn in your car, are you struggling to analyze every little detail about how you make that turn and then you can't even make it? Or are you just saying, hey, you know what? I'm kind of in the lane and then I'll adapt as I turn into that on the street. That's the story of every single startup that ever existed. So yes, you're navigating uncertainty and you're doing things that you didn't think you would do. But everyone else is in the same boat. So just remember that. That's all.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Matt.
Thank you.